In Brussels, EU leaders convened to discuss decisions with significant implications for the continent and for Ukraine. The group expressed unified support for Ukraine, though there were notable differences regarding how to manage the substantial financial requirements involved. The proposal to seize Russia's $260 billion in frozen assets was a central topic, with Eastern European states advocating for immediate action and suggesting these funds could serve as compensation for Ukraine. In contrast, Germany, France, and the European Central Bank highlighted legal complexities and the potential impact on the euro's international reputation if the EU were to confiscate sovereign assets. There were concerns that such a move might affect investor confidence, potentially leading to capital outflows and instability within the European financial system, with possible effects beyond Europe. After extended discussions, the EU reached a compromise, choosing to utilize only the windfall profits generated by the frozen Russian assets, estimated at approximately $3 billion annually, rather than the principal assets themselves. This approach was presented as a practical and legally sound measure intended to minimize risk, though some observers considered it insufficient given the scale of the challenges. Ukraine's financial needs, including reconstruction and defense, remain significantly higher than the amount provided by this compromise, leading to the perception that a comprehensive solution has yet to be achieved. The summit highlighted the EU's ongoing effort to balance its responsibilities to Ukraine with the legal and economic considerations of its member states and institutions. The bloc is now considering additional options to support Ukraine, such as issuing joint debt, a step that presents its own set of political debates and risks. The outcome indicates that while the EU remains committed to assisting Ukraine, its financial actions are shaped by legal, political, and economic constraints. The discussion continues as the EU seeks a sustainable and effective path forward. The concept of seizing Russian assets was introduced as a significant and complex policy consideration. This idea developed in response to Ukraine's ongoing financial challenges, which have continued to intensify. The conflict resulting from Russia's invasion has had a substantial impact on Ukraine's economy, with reconstruction costs now estimated to exceed $450 billion. Ukraine currently requires $3.4 billion each month to maintain basic government operations, a sum it is unable to secure independently. International assistance, particularly from the United States, has become less predictable, increasing expectations for Europe to identify alternative solutions. Ukrainian officials have questioned whether European taxpayers should be responsible for these costs, while Russian assets remain frozen within EU banks. The proposal to utilize these assets has found particular support in countries geographically closer to Russia, where concerns about regional security are heightened. The European Union has faced a complex decision, balancing adherence to international law with the practical need to support Ukraine. The discussion extends beyond financial considerations, touching on the EU's role as a rules-based institution and its capacity to respond to crises. The scale of the conflict has prompted the EU to evaluate policy options that are without precedent in its history. Each potential course of action involves significant implications, requiring careful assessment of both risks and benefits. Following Russia's 2022 invasion, Western nations responded by freezing approximately $260 billion of Russian central bank reserves, of which $210 billion is located within the EU. The majority of these assets, close to $190 billion, are held at Euroclear in Brussels, positioning Belgium as a central point in this financial situation. Although the principal remains untouched, these assets continue to generate significant annual profits. The EU has chosen to tax these profits, directing around $3 billion each year to support Ukraine. This approach avoids the legal complexities of seizing the principal, but also underscores the difference between available resources and actual needs. The concentration of assets in a single institution makes them both accessible and legally challenging. The EU's contribution, while notable, addresses only a small portion of Ukraine's requirements. These frozen billions now represent both potential and limitation. The primary obstacle to seizing Russia's assets is international law, particularly the principle of sovereign immunity. Central bank reserves are protected by international agreements, and confiscating them would challenge the legal framework the EU upholds. Such an action could prompt a response from Russia and raise concerns among other countries, potentially affecting global confidence in the euro. The European Central Bank noted that seizing the assets could lead to capital outflows and impact currency stability. The potential benefit for Ukraine was weighed against possible long-term effects on Europe's financial reputation. EU leaders considered the precedent this action might set for future situations. Legal and financial constraints ultimately prevented the move. While the ethical arguments were significant, the broader implications were carefully considered. The EU opted for a cautious approach, exploring other options that would maintain financial stability. This discussion highlighted the boundaries of the EU's risk tolerance in financial matters. Belgium, where Euroclear is based, plays a central role in the situation regarding frozen assets. Actions involving these assets could result in legal challenges and economic considerations for Belgium. Euroclear's position as a neutral and reliable custodian is significant. A forced seizure could affect its standing in global markets. If clients were to withdraw, it could impact Belgium's financial sector and have broader effects internationally. The United States, with fewer assets involved, advocated for a firmer approach. But Belgium would experience most of the consequences. Belgian authorities have approached the issue with caution, emphasizing the need for a legally sound and internationally supported resolution. The decision to use only windfall profits was considered a balanced and manageable option for Belgium. This approach enabled support for Ukraine while minimizing legal uncertainties. Belgium's situation illustrates the interconnected nature and sensitivities of the EU's financial system. The responsibility placed on a single country highlights the challenges of coordinated action within the EU. With full seizure not pursued, the G7 introduced a different approach, a $50 billion reparations loan to Ukraine, supported by anticipated profits from the frozen assets. This arrangement would provide Ukraine with immediate resources to be repaid gradually from the annual returns. The proposal appeared balanced, avoiding direct seizure and potential legal complications. However, questions soon arose regarding responsibility if the assets were released or the conflict concluded. Germany, and several others, expressed reservations about assuming potential debt. Some critics maintained that the plan remained legally uncertain and unnecessarily complicated. Divergent views on risk sharing and structure ultimately prevented agreement. In the end, even innovative financial solutions could not overcome the EU's internal differences. In addition to sovereign immunity, bilateral investment treaties, or BITs, between EU states and Russia present further legal considerations. These agreements are designed to protect Russian assets from expropriation. They also provide Russia with the option to pursue claims in international tribunals. If the EU were to authorize asset seizure, individual member states could encounter lengthy and expensive legal proceedings. Some observers suggest that Russia's actions could warrant exceptions to these treaties, but the legal justification remains uncertain. The potential for prolonged litigation and significant financial liabilities is a notable concern. As a result, coordinated EU action is highly complex. Existing agreements continue to limit the EU's options during this period. The EU's ongoing discussions about frozen Russian assets are part of a broader process of gradual integration and cooperation. Each significant challenge, whether financial or geopolitical, provides an opportunity to assess the mechanisms and resilience of the Union. With direct asset seizure and reparations loans currently not moving forward, the EU is once again considering joint debt, similar to measures taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. This method has previously enabled the EU to raise substantial funds efficiently. Issuing collective bonds would allow the EU to share financial risk and generate resources for Ukraine's reconstruction and defense. This approach, however, involves careful consideration of national sovereignty and fiscal policy. Supporters of joint borrowing view it as a step toward a more integrated Europe, with the potential for coordinated action on international matters. Meanwhile, some member states, including the Netherlands, Austria, Denmark, and Sweden, express concerns about the possibility of ongoing financial transfers between countries. Each new challenge prompts further discussion about the EU's direction, with a range of perspectives on the future structure of the Union. The situation in Ukraine has led the EU to coordinate aid, sanctions, and defense more closely than in previous years. Joint borrowing may serve as a demonstration of European support for Ukraine, and as an indicator of the EU's capacity for unified action. The ongoing debate concerns not only financial matters but also the broader question of the EU's future as a political and economic entity. Progress toward joint debt reflects a gradual development of a shared European identity, based on common values, responsibilities, and objectives for the continent. The situation surrounding the frozen assets has prompted the EU to reflect on its core identity. The discussion extended beyond the issue of funding Ukraine, serving as an examination of the EU's values and its approach to collective action. The resulting compromise highlighted the challenges of consensus-based decision-making. While the EU possesses significant economic influence, its processes for rapid action remain limited. Ongoing challenges are gradually encouraging the Union to consider deeper integration, driven by practical needs. The conflict in Ukraine is contributing to this evolution, prompting the EU to develop new mechanisms for collective response. The developments regarding frozen assets illustrate the EU's process of self-definition. The question remains whether the EU's careful approach can adjust to a changing global environment. The decisions made in this period will influence Europe's future direction and cohesion.